obese, so virtually no one would consciously choose to be obese in this simplistic sense.
And we got
Maybe it looks
piggies in
something
this.
more like this, where you have this lifelong, continuous series of choices to pick certain foods over others, like whether to order fried chicken or grilled chicken, regular Coke or Diet Coke, a small fries or a supersized fries, and certain behaviors over others, like whether to get up and exercise or stay on the couch. And over time, maybe it's the cumulative effect of these many individual choices that causes someone to become obese. I do think this is a bit closer to reality. However, even this analogy is still very incomplete. Consider this graph taken from a 1990 study where 24 subjects were overfed by 1,000 calories per day for 100 days, or just over 3 months. All the subjects were under 24/7 supervision by the research staff, so we can be confident they were actually following the protocol. Each one of these bars represents a single person, and the height of the bar represents how much weight they gained in response to the same 1,000 calorie surplus. This person, over here on the left, only gained an extra 10 pounds, while this person, over here on the right, gained an extra 30 pounds while eating the same 1,000 calories extra per day. This could be due to a number of factors, but a big one is genetic differences in metabolism. Looking at this later study from 2018, we can see that just like there are large differences in weight gain, there are
Your resting metabolic rate, chat, which is, of course, incredibly important and can vary greatly as a consequence of your sedentary lifestyle choices, but also as a consequence of your genetic predisposition, thyroid disorders, and numerous other factors, okay? I myself have very slow metabolism.
There are also large differences in how many calories people burn at rest. Just sitting on the couch, doing nothing at all, this lucky person over here burns about 150 calories more than metabolic equations predict, and this person on the left would burn 250 calories less than metabolic equations predict. In other words, if none of these people exercised at all, this person would still burn about 400 calories more per day than this person. So, going back to the buttons, a small fries from McDonald's has about 200 calories, and a supersized fries has about 600 calories. All else being equal, that's a 400 calorie surplus if you choose to supersize. But this person also burns 400 calories more. So through no action of their own, they could choose to supersize every time, and their net caloric balance would be exactly the same as this other person who chooses the small fries. But this only considers resting energy expenditure, the number of calories you burn at rest. People also burn calories through exercise, the thermic effect.
Does putting on muscle increase resting metabolic rate? Absolutely. The more lean muscle mass you have in your body, the higher your resting metabolic rate is, because your body is a machine. Okay? I know that a lot of Miss kids are doing Camp Canute right now, so they're probably like, we're already hearing this. We heard this already from Canute, and he's more jacked than you. And that is true. But that is precisely the point. Canute probably eats a fuckload just to even keep his same level of muscle mass. Okay? The more lean muscle mass you have, the higher your resting metabolic rate is. Why is that not true for more body fat? Because your body fat is not you're not feeding your fat in the same way that you're feeding your muscles.
Of food in something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. And the NEAT component of metabolism can vary dramatically between individuals, even more than resting energy expenditure. NEAT refers to the calories you burn from daily activities that aren't actual exercise, so stuff like fidgeting, tapping your feet, etc. And even though you can somewhat modify your NEAT levels by making an extra effort to move around a bit more throughout the day, NEAT is still largely subconsciously regulated in the brain, and it's dynamic. So if you have a genetic predisposition for low NEAT, you aren't very hyperactive.
The ironic part is that NEATs and EETs, the Twitch chat, probably has low NEAT.
And you don't fidget much. And let's say you tried to force yourself to fidget more. In many cases, your brain would simply find a way to lower NEAT someplace else. So NEAT is, to a significant degree, outside of your control, and it can differ enormously between individuals. This study from Levine and colleagues overfed participants by 1,000 calories per day for 8 weeks and found that NEAT...
By the way, the irony is that this entire video is just... He already described why obesity is not a choice in the beginning when he said, if you asked 1,000 people to click on a button on whether or not they would want to be obese or not, they would just click on, no, I don't want to be obese. So like he ended the video right here. Really, we could have just skipped the rest of it, but I'm just kidding. This is great.
Weight levels ranged from negative 98, they actually moved around less, to plus 692 calories per day. This means that while both of these subjects ate an extra 1,000 calories per day, this person quite literally fidgeted off about 700 of those extra 1,000, while this person actually fidgeted less, meaning their body had to deal with all those extra 1,000 calories eaten, plus a little more. So clearly, anyone who's been genetically blessed with a high resting metabolic rate and high NEAT levels can choose to press the junk food button many more times and still maintain a lower body weight compared to someone who's not as metabolically gifted. And this matches with our everyday experience. We all know someone who can eat whatever they want and remain almost inexplicably thin, and we all know someone who's tried every diet book on the shelf, yet remains overweight. Most people would be quick to praise the thin person for their discipline.
Fuck you guys who can just like eat whatever the fuck you want, okay? My metabolism is so goddamn slow, dude. I literally get fucking fat from smelling food, okay?
Critique the overweight person for simply lacking willpower and making the wrong choices, not realizing the many baseline genetic factors that could be making it very easy for the thin person to stay thin and making it very hard for the overweight person to lose any weight at all. But that's just metabolism. There's another big factor here, which is hunger. Research also shows that some people simply experience more hunger than others in response to dieting. Some people feel like they're constantly fighting their body's urge to eat more, while others feel more normal hunger, where it's low after meals and picks up as it gets closer to mealtime. Just consider this hunger study from 2013, which looked at the difference between eating a high-fat meal and a low-fat meal. Now, it turns out both the high-fat meal and the low-fat meal were able to suppress hunger very well on average. However, when that average trend was split up into individual subjects, you suddenly see this huge disparity between individuals. Some people were still quite hungry after eating the meal, others felt very full. And since hunger is what naturally drives food intake for most people, we once again see that someone who still feels very hungry after a meal.
It's so funny because, like, bro, you don't even do cardio, lol. What are you talking about? I literally just played basketball for 2 hours this morning. Why do you keep saying that? Bro, you don't even like cardio, lol. You'll never lose weight. So far, first of all, I lost 100 pounds in like a year and a half when I originally lost the weight. Secondly, I do cardio. What the fuck are you talking about? I just did cardio earlier this morning. You're a 25-month subscriber. You already know that that's on my Instagram stories. And lastly, doing cardio is overcoming your metabolic differences, as he is explaining here. Not having a sedentary lifestyle is going to help move the needle. But right now we're talking about your natural predisposition towards burning calories. Terminally online weight loss tips. Yeah, and also I went from 285 to 255 over the course of the past year. So while it's a lot slower, while my weight loss and muscle recomp journey has been a lot slower this time around because I am 30 years old, it's been going quite well.
Time stopping compared to someone who feels full. So we've covered 2 genetic factors explaining why weight gain happens to some people more easily than others, even given the same food and exercise choices. But there are still so many other biological factors that can play a role, such as whether or not you take certain medications that can increase appetite and water retention. There are also neuroendocrine conditions that can impact weight gain through hormones and metabolism. Then there's pregnancy and menopause, which have hormonal and metabolic impacts, and physical disabilities, which makes burning calories through NEAT and exercise more challenging. Now, of course, all of this doesn't mean that calories in, calories out only works for some people. It is a simple fact that obesity results from eating more calories than you burn, and tightly controlled metabolic ward experiments repeatedly confirm that caloric intake is the driver of both fat loss and fat gain.
That's crazy.
This means that anyone who is obese got obese by eating in a sustained caloric surplus over time. It's just that avoiding that sustained.
But once again, remember, people that get obese are eating at a caloric surplus. But remember the original the first 6 minutes of this video. That caloric surplus is whatever your resting metabolic rate is, i.e., what your body burns without doing anything every single day, right? Except, and then some, like whatever goes above that, right? Except people's resting metabolic rate differs greatly. Okay? So remember that. It differs greatly. So some people are not becoming obese because they're like fucking chomping on food with like bad eating habits or whatever. They're becoming obese because they genetically have a predisposition towards obesity. This is a caloric like Medea.
Surplus is so much harder for some people than it is for others, and for reasons that are beyond their choosing. And this is why I think it's incorrect to reduce.
Also, our food is fucking dog shit in America too, for the record. Like, our food is not good. It's just not good. It's not healthy. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. It is full of fucking fillers, disgusting shit. It doesn't fucking satisfy you. It's awful.
All of these factors down to a simple choice to be obese or not. Because if that were the case, why would obesity rates suddenly start trending up in the 1970s?
Exactly.
Did people just suddenly start choosing to be obese? Or is there yet another layer to this? Well, no. I don't think that the spike was due to more people choosing to be obese, but rather from the fact that high-calorie foods became so much more readily available for cheaper prices, meaning more people had more access to delicious, highly processed, high-calorie foods. And this leads us into the whole other side.
Americans had nothing left after the 70s. The only thing they had was delicious treats. Okay? No more house with a white picket fence. Okay? No more unions. No more labor power. All you got was treats. Okay? And that was the way to showcase or to truly experience the way that kings lived, okay? By getting the delicious treats that are readily available. That's why I always talk about the jalapeno poppers, because it is an American cultural landmark.
Side of this, which is the environmental factors. So entirely apart from the genetic and biological factors that we just went through.
And of course, high fructose corn syrup subsidies, yes. Commercialized production of high fructose corn syrup and the subsidies that the government got, and then the fucking cycle of lobbying that put it into pretty much everything. So there's that too.
There are also environmental factors that can impact your susceptibility to obesity. This includes stuff like the food environment, where apart from the spike in availability, we also see better, flashier marketing for high-calorie foods that promote overconsumption and large portion sizes. There's also the fact that junk food tends to be cheaper, meaning it's more accessible for people of lower economic incomes. Then there are social factors, like the type of diet your family and friends eat, which can make it a lot harder, or in the case of dependents like children, virtually impossible to make so-called good choices. Then there are the lifestyle factors, like how much sleep you get. And while it may be tempting to tell people to just get more sleep, that isn't always feasible depending on work and other responsibilities. In fact,
yeah, sleep is a big part of it too.
Found that night shift work was associated with a 23% higher risk of being overweight, and this 2019 meta-analysis found a dose-response relationship.
But isn't it so much easier to just be a conservative? By the way, Jeff is wonderful, right? And he is taking the necessary steps to describe all this boring, yada yada scientific bullshit, right? Isn't it so much easier to just be conservative and turn around and just say, no, you're fat because you're a lazy fuck? That's the reality. That's what it's like when you're fucking defending empirical evidence or defending arguments against like someone who is just a reactionary fucking idiot. It's so much easier to just be like, nah, you're a fat fucking piece of shit because you're lazy. It's so much easier to just say that. And then in an effort to combat that kind of misinformation and that kind of idiocy, you have to turn around and be like, no, actually, obesity is an incredibly complex medical phenomena that is a consequence of all of these different systemic reasons. And here are some studies to back up that point. It's like, yada, 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 shut the fuck up. You're literally fucking boring. You're boring. You're so boring. And then, yeah, saying everybody's just a fat fuck because they're lazy is truly brave and courageous. Yeah. That's the problem. Especially at a time when, like, stupidity is fucking rewarded. Especially on platforms where, like social media, whoever arrives at the quick quip faster is rewarded as, like, the correct one. Whoever is more confident about their statement is seen as, like, the correct person. It is infinitely easier to be a reactionary bullshit idiot, a reactionary bullshit spreader, than one who tries to arrive at the truth.
Between sleep duration and obesity risk. Less sleep meant more risk of being obese, with 7 to 8 hours being the sweet spot on average. Then there are psychological factors like stress and depression, This 2010 meta-analysis of 14 studies found that stress was a risk factor for weight gain, and this other meta-analysis from the same year found that depression was predictive of obesity risk. So, coming back to the original question, is obesity a choice? Well, I think the answer is no, at least not in all cases, and certainly not in the simplistic sense. There's just too much of an influence from genetics and environment to shift the blame entirely on the individual for their circumstance. But that also doesn't mean that no one has any control over their health and their body weight. Clearly, if people want to lose weight, even if there are many factors working against them, such as low metabolic rate, high hunger, and so forth, it's still possible to lose weight if you sustain a caloric deficit over time. And I can link another video here explaining exactly how to do that, which goes beyond simply eating less calories and delves into behavioral modifications that most people will need to make to have long-term success. Ultimately, though, I think the is obesity a choice question comes back to semantics. Perhaps what I mean by choice is slightly different from what you mean by choice, but I think that if you did want to argue that it is a choice in some sense, I think the best you could do is say that it's a complex series of choices intertwined with many other complex contributing factors.
Ultimately, you can overcome all odds, okay? There is nothing on the planet stopping you from having a fucking six-pack. There are a million different factors that will try to stop you from having it, but those are only hurdles that you can overcome. And the same attitude exists for functionally everything that incels fucking advocate for, okay? Incels love talking about how, they're just impossible. It's impossible for them to fucking, it's impossible for them to fucking get women or whatever, because they're unattractive or whatever the fuck, right? And that's not the case. That's just not the reality. And a lot of the, besides disabilities, no, even, come on, like, of course, you're basically regurgitating what I just said, okay? Even disabilities in that circumstance is still a hurdle that you can overcome. It's just about how mountainous that fucking journey is, all right? Yeah, I already mentioned thyroid disorders and shit too on top of that. Like, I know that. Same attitude for choosing to be a poor idea? No. But you have to understand that this in and of itself does not mean that like people are choosing to be fucking fat. This does not mean that people are choosing to be obese. Okay, because those factors, those hurdles, okay, are sometimes almost impossible to overcome. Okay? Like thyroid diseases is a good example of this, all right? More importantly than anything else, though, is capitalism. That's why whenever we fucking talk about, this shit, whenever we talk about like, obesity or being fat, I always tell you, like, no, go to the gym, no matter what. Going to the gym will always make you happier. It'll always be better for you. I will never advocate against the gym. Fitness is fucking awesome, okay? Fitness is great. It'll make you feel better, straight up. There are no disadvantages and only advantages, okay? Picking up weights and putting them down over and over again, doing it every single day, is only going to improve your life. 1,000,000%. Having said that, however, of course, there are gigantic hurdles, one of the most important ones being capitalism. Capitalism is stopping you from being able to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Capitalism is stopping you from being able to eat adequately because healthy food options are oftentimes more expensive. Okay? Capitalism is the reason why the corn subsidy and the corn lobby and also all the fucking horrifyingly bad foods, like lobbying for the terribly, terribly unhealthy food choices is super prominent. And that's the only access that you have. Capitalism and marketing is the reason why you see incredibly unhealthy food options as marketed to you at an early age, making it normal for you to consume these gigantic sizes. Capitalism is the reason why you can supersize things, where in Europe, for example, the sizing in European countries is dramatically different and much smaller. Ultimately, they are all gigantic hurdles. They're very difficult to overcome, but you can overcome them. Okay, so at the individual level, there are things that you can always say, or there are things that you can always do. It's just those hurdles will make it infinitely less likely for you to be able to successfully achieve these results.
And so, as people in the health and fitness space, I think we should make an effort to be more understanding of these factors and more compassionate toward people who are struggling, rather than making assumptions about their choices.
It literally is just for physical appearance. You can be healthy and confident in yourself without going to the gym. What? Are you fucking insane? You absolutely can. But also, no, going to the gym does improve your mental health as well. What the fuck? There is plenty of fucking evidence for that as well. What? This is the most insane thing I've ever heard, dude. What are you talking about? When I talk about fitness, I'm talking about fitness dick in your mouth, okay? When I talk about fitness, I'm talking about the mental stability that you get from working out, the structure that you add to your life. I'm talking about achieving goals that you set for yourself. There are so many things that that improve when you go to the gym. Okay?
Choices and their characteristics. And then instead of blaming them for their circumstance, instead focus on pointing them in the right direction with good, sustainable nutrition advice when they ask for it. Now, I want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Mike Israetel for the button analogy. I first heard that from him, and I thought it was great. And I'll also go ahead and link all the articles that I referenced in this video down below. And before we go, I want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community.
The thing is, when you get, that was Jeff Nippard, friend of the show. Is obesity a choice? Science explained. I guess the only downside of gyms or like getting super into fitness is that once you get, he has a good pinned comment too. Once you get really into it,
is obesity,
if you don't do it all the time, it can fuck you up a little bit. I've noticed two recurring bits of pushback. The first argument is like, sure, these factors all show that not being obese is harder for some people, but that doesn't mean it isn't all a choice. Hard choices are still choices. I've noticed this coming mostly from people who are either currently in good shape or used to be obese but have since lost a lot of weight. While this life change is commendable, and I have a huge amount of respect for anyone who has done it, to me, this feels similar to those who've gotten rich telling poor people, yes, exactly. Exactly.